So we've created a small grant for the community called the Community Initiatives Grant. So this presentation will go through give you a bit of a background of the grant, gives you a bit of some tips that you can utilize to submit better application and some tricks and just overall things to consider. And the reason why I'm taking this time to do this is because I want you guys to win. I do not want to write a no, your funding request was not approved. I want to always be saying yes. Um, so let's dive in. So what is the Community Initiatives Grant? So the primary reason why we created this grant was to support organizations within this ecosystem that have an innovation focus, like who are focused on helping like innovation focused entrepreneurs grow and scale their businesses. So our grant will cover like training, mentorship, information, and other resource sharing and industry engagement. Like these are just broad coverage. And as I go on in this presentation, like you will find out a lot more of like how you can access this grant and how you can even tweak some of your initiatives to be so broad but still narrow to Edmonton's innovation ecosystem. So we had an old model, and you can see this old buggy. It is to represent the past, what we were asking you guys. So before we only focused on events, and some example of events would be like networking sessions and stuff like that. And we'll do like single events or multi-session events, like if you're having repetitive meetings and so forth. Like the Health Innovation Hub would meet every month. That's something that we fund. And that was primarily targeted to service providers and not-for-profit organization. And we capped the funding at $10,000 at that time. So we've been looking at so many applications. We've been having our ears on the ground, and we realized that I feel like we felt like the ecosystem needed a lot more than just networking and engagement, which is great because I don't think you can find a lot of money out there that will fund events. So what we did was we created a brand new model. Do you see the sports car? More money and more options. So we created two funding streams. So we have the events funding stream, and then we have the small scale program funding stream. So our event funding stream, can you hear me, guys?
Yep, we can.
Okay, great. It was so quiet. So the event funding stream, we still have single and multiple events there, and we still have like network and engagement going on there. And I've pulled out some examples. Like you have fireside chats, you have luncheons and breakfasts, industry meetings. We cover that. And it doesn't have to be meetings within a brick and mortar. Like you could take your own innovative approach to these meetings. It could be like even a bicycle ride through the city with industry persons. You get what I mean? Like once you bring people together consciously and allow that connection to take place, we want to fund that. So we also have like pitch competitions, which we see a lot of. Those come under events. And then you have like conferences and hackathons. So the normal run-of-the-mill conferences where it's just event focused and you have like people just talking and sharing just information and things that are happening. Those are events, right? And you will only get up to $10,000. However, if you come to us with a small scale program, and these are things that have like a learning component to it or like an entrepreneur support in it, then you can access up to $35,000. So conferences can shift over this side to the small scale program if within your conference, it has a learning component in it as well. Like it can be a small scale master classes in that conferences. It could be mentorship in that conference as well. That's the only way it will shift over to the small scale program, right? And that's the only way you can access $35,000. So another thing that you can look at as well is like Steam promotion. And that's something that I haven't seen a lot of, but it's great because you're supporting entrepreneurs by getting more people interested in technology, engineering, and those other disciplines that help to drive innovation, right? We also want to fund pilot programs. So if you've created a pilot, like a program, and you want the data to validate the need for that program too, in addition to you've already done your research and you've done that research and said, okay, Edmonton needs this program, but you want to validate that need, then we will fund that small scale program, like that pilot program, just to give you that data so that you can ask, maybe from us, maybe from Alberta Innovates, for a larger pool of funding, right? So this specific small scale program model was to try and drive innovation within our ecosystem and trying to get you guys to really showcase like what is a need out there and to try and solve that need on a small scale first, and then if it is a success, then you can get more funding and fund it on a large scale after, like on a larger scale afterwards. So that's the reason why we created the small scale programs, right? What we've
I
also
should,
done. Oh,
oh,
great. Yeah,
sorry, I
you
was
can
going
go
to
ahead.
add a couple of points on that. We have a limited funding pool, so not necessarily all projects can get funded because we can only fund up until we run out of money. So we have to be aware of that, and we may not fund to the entire limit the whole time. It depends on the demonstratability of the impact in the community, right?
That's correct. So if you go over to our website, you will see our evaluation sheet. So we've created that evaluation sheet so that we don't fund one person $15,000 and then someone else comes back with a similar thing and then we fund them $35,000. So what we've tried to do is create this model where we grade the application based on its merits and based on the information that you give us. You'll get like percentage, and then that's the maximum percentage of the fund that you will ever get to access based on the information that you provide, right? And the demonstrating need and all those other things. So what we've also done is expanded who can access or resources, because we've heard that entrepreneurs want to access our community initiative fund. And so we made it possible for entrepreneurs to now access our community initiative fund. But we will not consider an entrepreneur-led application if it is not if they don't partner with a service provider or post-secondary institution. So they can lead the application and they can come up with the event or with the initiative or whatever what have you, but they need to partner with a service provider or post-secondary institution. I'll explain why that thought, why we have that thinking later down. And then we've also opened up the service providers. So we're not only looking for nonprofit, we're looking for profit, right? We don't care as long as the focus is um, building up our ecosystem and strengthening our entrepreneurs within the ecosystem. And once it's not swayed towards your personal business development. And then that's the main reason why we forced entrepreneurs to partner with service providers and post-secondary institution is because we want to protect them from not going into the weeds of doing self-promotion. We don't want self-promotion because self-promotion doesn't necessarily or doesn't serve the better interests of the community on a whole. So these are some key considerations, and I've underlined must so much because I just want to I just want to highlight that this can make or break your application, right? So if you're not a member of ERIN, we won't consider your application. That's one of the first thing you have to be. If you get funding already from Alberta Innovates, we're not going to consider your application because Alberta Innovates and Edmonton RIN, it's one pool of money, right? So whatever you bring to the table, it must benefit the wider ecosystem and hard to reach community. And when we say it hard to reach community, it doesn't mean that they are the only ones who should be included in that program. You should still make every effort to still include other people, right? So it shouldn't be, oh, only Indigenous entrepreneurs here. You make every effort to target Indigenous entrepreneurs. But if someone who is not Indigenous comes to you and say, hey, I want to join too, then we support you allowing them to join. And we support the wording of such initiatives to be open to everyone at all times. So spell it out that even though you're focused on this hard to reach population, other people can still join. And maybe this is how too you're going to encourage them to join. And we want to bridge divides. We want to build a cohesive community. And you have to bring different people together sometimes in order to do that. So the initiative must be geared to the innovation community in Edmonton. So I don't want to see, or the community initiative subcommittee doesn't want to see proposal coming in and say, hey, there is labor shortage and or there is a lack of hiring of certain populations in Edmonton. Here's my program to help that. If you don't specify that it's for like specific to the innovation ecosystem and maybe helping them maybe probably build their capacity in attracting maybe talent and so forth, you're not gonna get the money because it's too broad. Always tie it back into the innovation ecosystem. If you're trying to focus on social innovation, because social innovation is great, we love it. And we find that a lot of Indigenous communities, that's what they focus on more. But it has to be technology driven social innovation because that's our focus. We want to create more tech companies here. That's the long and short of it. That is our mandate, right?
Danny, you have a couple of questions.
Yeah, I'll take
SJ,
questions after.
okay.
If yeah, I'll take the questions after. So when you create a budget, your budget must align with the outcomes for the community, right? So we don't want to see an ask of $25,000 to run a 1 day masterclass, and you have your target as 50 people in the ecosystem. It doesn't weigh in terms of the money that you're requesting and the impact or outcome on the ecosystem. You can't ask for $35,000 and you don't see anywhere where a business is gonna grow or something tangible is gonna come out for the community. Like always keep that in mind, right? You must also look for other source of funding. And we do that. We like to see other source of funding because that shows partnership. Edmonton has a lot of people who want to offer things in the ecosystem. And when you have everyone going after one source of funding, it creates unnecessary competition, in my opinion. When if you had merged your resources and merge your effort, you would achieve something greater. So that's what we're pushing for. You must also provide a detailed budget. If you get funding from another source, you need to tell us how you're going to break out that funding as well, so that we can work out on our end that you're going to use our money appropriately. You must engage other stakeholders. It goes hand in hand with getting other funding sources. So engaging other stakeholders doesn't necessarily mean money. It can mean they can give you in-kind help. They can help you market your event. They can give you a location free of charge. They can lend you their volunteers or so forth. But get other stakeholders involved so that you can reach more people in Edmonton. And when I say Edmonton, I don't mean Edmonton core. I mean the region, like Leduc, St. Albert, all those other people. Engage them. Don't always think Edmonton core. There must be a demonstrated need for the initiative. So I've seen applications where they talk about, oh, the ecosystem needs this, and I agree, it does need that, because that's my opinion. But opinions don't get you the money. Data gets you the money, right? So if you can pull that data from somewhere, it could be a pilot project that you ran or somebody else ran. And that's why stakeholders are great. You can share data and information and you pull that together and then you create that need. Not all applications need like a 10-page need, but if you're asking for $35,000, you best spend some time trying to convince us that there is a need, right? There must be a quantifiable value in funding the initiative. And I know that engagement is something that is hard to quantify, but the type of engagement is something that can be quantified, right? So if you have an event, maybe you can quantify your engagement as the amount of people that are coming back to you to request more information, maybe the amount of sign up for a specific program that you're running. Like there are ways to quantify that engagement, even if it's just an event where it's just organic interaction. So how do you prepare like a very strong application for us? I feel like the most important thing is that you need to understand your audience. And your audience include the community initiatives subcommittee and the steering committee. You have to understand what are ERIN's values. And it's all on the website. It says on the website like what we're focused on, right? Like you have to understand why we're in this game, why these volunteers are giving their time to build this ecosystem. Understand that. And that's the first step. The next step is whoever you're targeting, don't give them something that they don't need. At the AIN conference, the indigenous presenters, they were always talking about don't tell us what we need. Come and find out what we need. Because their need doesn't necessarily match what you think that they need. So you need to engage your target audience so that you can verify or back up whatever you're bringing to the table. It should matter to them and it should matter to us. Now, the need, you need to support it by facts. And then I say this because I wanted to go the extra mile to find out what already exists in the ecosystem. Am I just bringing another competing program here? Am I just doing a repeat of the other initiatives that already exist? Like you need to understand like who are your competitors? And in understanding that competitor, then you can understand what they're not doing. And then that's how you can tap into what they're not doing and then put forward a stronger application and say, hey, this doesn't really exist in the ecosystem. The next thing is that it has to be a value to the wider community. We've gotten so many applications with narrow pitch competitions. And I can say the PSIs are guilty of it the most, but I've seen many other applicants who are guilty of it. You're hosting, and I just give this example, and there are many other examples. You're hosting like a pitch competition, and you're just hosting it in, let's say, Timbuktu University. And only Timbuktu University students can really what do you call it, apply and pitch their product, right? There's no opportunity for Timbuktu University to learn from U of A university students, or even to build that friendship that can maybe someday lead into them starting companies together. That's how you increase touch points, and that's how you increase effect. If you broaden the reach of whatever initiative that you're bringing to the table. So another important thing is that you have to craft strong KPIs that meet our mandates. So in knowing our value, you know what we want to push. We want to push job creation. We want to push revenue growth opportunities. We want to increase access to resources, including investments in these companies as well. Did you know that Startup TNT started as a company that was solely funded by ERIN, and they grew to what they are right now? That's what we want for the entire ecosystem, you know? But you have to give us what we need, right? We want more entrepreneurs here. We want people working together. We want serial entrepreneurs. We want to engage the people who probably sold a company. We want them to think, oh, maybe I should start another one again. You know, we want to reach and touch all of Edmonton. We can't do it on our own, and that's why we're giving you the funding so that you can go out and touch all of Edmonton for us, right? Then we want you to explain how you will measure the success, which is very important. So you taught the talk, now you got to walk the walk. So you have to show us, like, what are the systems that you're going to put in place in order to give us the data that we need so that we can evaluate, okay, great. Maybe we should think about giving this thing a long-term funding. Or maybe we should probably up our events from $10,000 and maybe put it to 20, because like maybe we can do something greater for the Edmonton region, even probably bigger than InVentures. But you have to give us the data for that, right? And the next thing that people fail to do is that you need to sell yourself. You have to sell yourself. Like, you can't buy me unless you tell me, hey, I'm great at this, and this is what I was able to accomplish during this time frame, and so forth. Like, give me your track record of success. Then I want you to quantify that return on investment for the community, right? So we give you $35,000. How are we gonna double that investment that we gave you in terms of like the things that are happening in Edmonton's ecosystem? Like, those are the things that we want to see happening. And then I just created this a brief diagram to kind of show you how you can tap into the value. So as I said, find out what is the need and then find out if it's not being met. Whatever is not being met, you put it in this value place right here. Then you look at what currently exists and see if it meets the need that you highlighted here. If it doesn't, then you can put the gap in here as well. Then you look at your proposal and then you see if there's any part of your proposal that kind of touches on the gap that you identified. And that's what you lean into. That's the value that you need to show us on, the person who is evaluating your application. So I just pulled out a few things that keep coming up, and I think this is the last slide, but this is just to tell you what we cannot fund. So we cannot fund your personal business development, or we cannot fund this self-promotion. We don't fund salaries, but we do offer up to 25% to augment the salary of someone who is probably working hard on this initiative. We don't cover travel expenses, and all government places cannot cover alcohol. We do not cover program or curriculum development. Yeah, like, you have to do that work yourself, but we can fund your pilot. And we definitely do not support any initiative that doesn't support Edmonton's innovation ecosystem. So with that, I will take questions.
Okay, Danny, we have Kylie first.
Okay, Kylie, let's have it.
Oh,
Yeah, so I
sorry,
have
not
a.
Kylie, Kyle. My apologies,
That's
Kyle.
Oh,
okay.
Kyle.
It's
Then
spelled the same
Brittany,
way.
then Karima.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. I'm pretty new to this funding stream, and so I have a question just about like what exactly I would be able to use it for in terms of specifically implementing a pilot program. And so my question is like I work with health technology companies who would have a product that could benefit from something like a pilot program in Edmonton, where essentially you would use a certain amount of the technologies. The use of it and everything and the recording of data would be funded by a grant or something like that. Um, and so I'm wondering, like, is it
I can take this one, Kyle.
sure, please? Yeah, yeah.
We don't fund that.
Okay,
That is
that's kind of what I thought.
specific to a company that's trying to pilot something. When we mean pilot projects, when we say pilot projects, we mean pilot projects for engaging or training or development within the ecosystem for the entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. This is all about ecosystem development. We don't fund individual companies or projects like that. That would be, more like a INSERC or some other. There are several, or Alberta Innovates also has other, product demonstration grants, those sort of things. That's not what we're for. We're for community development.
So yeah, this one could be like if I had a bunch of these companies together and wanted to put on some sort of event to showcase this and had, objectives that I could measure and everything. That's what this grant would go towards.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I had follow-up questions that aren't as important now. But yeah, once again, thank you for the presentation.
No problem,
Yeah.
Kyle.
So is
Brittany.
Brittany next? Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Danny, and good to see some faces here. That's good. This is my first ERIN meeting, which is crazy because I remember when ERIN was just starting, which it's come a long way, absolutely, with especially now that there's cash. That's really nice to see. Okay, my questions are on global talent and partnerships that exist outside of the Edmonton ecosystem. If there's sort of a branch or a connection to the Edmonton ecosystem in either of those areas, is that something that would be funded, or like, is there a percentage that you want to see?
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
funded things that include like maybe Calgary people and so forth, but the majority of the beneficiaries has to be Edmontonian. So it has to be specifically targeted here. But if you pull in other people, that's fine. But it must primarily be for Edmonton's ecosystem.
Okay, so as long as the majority of and the benefit comes back to Edmonton, as long as
Edmonton's,
that's the main
yes.
focus. Okay,
Yeah, for
great.
example, if you were to have, an event here in Edmonton that invited international people there, and you could quantify how that is going to generate benefit for the ecosystem in growing and fostering the ecosystem, then it could possibly be funded for sure.
Okay. And I guess a follow-up question to that would be like virtual events. Is that something that you would be interested in, or you're thinking more in person in Edmonton, kind of driving traffic to Edmonton?
You know what? Virtual events are tricky because then, um, like your cost goes down tremendously, with a virtual event, and we only fund like 20% too of salaries. And I know that with virtual events, maybe your bottom line will be like guest speakers or stuff like to pay them. So it's really tricky for you to spin that one, but I'm
Okay.
not one to tell you not to try and spin it. But
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, that helps a lot. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No worries.
Next, we have Karima Batal.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the presentation, Danielle. I have two questions that might be the same thing, but the first is I want to know what exactly you mean by Edmonton's innovation ecosystem. Who belongs in that? Who are you targeting exactly? And possibly a follow-up question is, what do you define as innovation? Just to have a bit more clarity to understand like who this applies to. Thank you.
Yeah. That is a question that it's hard to answer in terms of what innovation means, because innovation is broad, but we do bring it back to the table by focusing on people who are utilizing tech to improve life or to improve how things are done. Um, and that's why social innovation is kind of tricky because it has to be pushed by tech. So like for instance, you're solving the forest fire, but it's an industry that can be pushed by using like drones to solve forest fires or stuff like that. Or you're looking at water resources or clean water, right? Like that industry. And but you're using tech to understand how you can achieve that more effectively. It's really hard to really give a definitive definition of innovation, and that's why we have left it open to some extent, and then we wait on a case by case basis. James, I don't know if you want to add to that one, but it's a bone of contention. But once you have some tech involved, because that's our focus, then you can spin any innovation.
Yeah, I think you've covered it, Danny.
Okay, great. So it's who next?
SARS
Sar?
next.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, everyone, and thank you, Danny, for the presentation. Really helpful to kind of hear you kind of go through some of those points. I just had a question regarding kind of I think there was a piece on like the segmentation aspect of things and positioning your proposal and applications. I mean, I think just historically, when we kind of look at finding ways to include hard to reach communities, there is a heavy focus on kind of being thoughtful of the challenges and pain points that they go through and maybe why they're not feeling included within the ecosystem and stuff. And for entities or organizations that are trying to address that, there is more or less like a full scale end to end approach that has to be kind of invested in to kind of nurture that and reduce some of those barriers and stuff, right? So
Yes.
so I guess my question is that when creating your proposal or application, are you taking into consideration the idea of kind of building an application that maybe there are some components within the event experience or program that caters towards those hard to reach communities and still finding ways that you can be inclusive to the greater kind of innovation ecosystem? Is that kind of the thought?
Yes. So yes. So we
Yeah, we're
we
trying to make
we
more entry points.
yeah, we're trying to make more entry points, and we do understand that you do want to segment some parts of of whatever you're doing specific to that, but there are ways still where you can include the wider ecosystem. Like for instance, let's just say you're hosting a Black founder pitch competition. Some of your judges could
Ironic.
be, I know, but some of your judges could be people within the wider ecosystem. Right.
Gotcha.
So there it's and your attendees, like you're not gonna say, oh, I just want Black attendees to come. Some of your attendees should be the wider ecosystem, because then those same Black founders can attract investment that they would have never normally, you know what I mean? Like make avenues for everyone who contributes to the ecosystem to come in and even see those under like hard to reach communities as well, so that they can discover talent.
Awesome. Thank you.